Picture a moment where someone tests you. A subtle jab at a dinner table, or a passive-aggressive remark disguised as a joke in a meeting. Have you ever found yourself instantly reacting, rushing to clarify or defend your position? You think clear communication solves disrespect. You assume that by over-explaining, you are establishing a firm boundary. You are not defending yourself. You are bleeding power. By showing them exactly how easily you can be provoked, you aren't protecting a boundary. You are handing them the remote control to your nervous system. This is the predictability tax. Machiavelli warned that men judge by what they see, not by what you feel. When your internal emotional state is highly visible and constantly accessible, your status instantly plummets. Today, we replace your emotional leakage with an untouchable architecture of structural leverage. So, before you rush to answer the next slight, let's examine the exact psychological trap you walk into every single day.
Power abhors a known variable.
Think about the social and professional dynamics in your life right now. You are likely the reliable one. You show up, you communicate clearly, you answer messages promptly, and you carefully explain your rationale to avoid any trace of misunderstanding. You believe that being a stabilizing, perfectly transparent force earns you respect. But look at the cold reality of your situation. You are routinely taken for granted. When you raise a legitimate complaint, it is met with a polite nod and instantly forgotten. Your boundaries are treated as mere suggestions, easily bypassed the moment someone else needs something from you. Meanwhile, observe the erratic, unpredictable, or highly guarded people in your circle. The ones who go silent without warning. The ones who are difficult to read. The moment they show even a flicker of dissatisfaction, everyone panics and scrambles to accommodate them. Why does your consistency breed subtle disrespect, while their unpredictability commands immediate attention? Because you do not understand emotional economics. In the marketplace of human interaction, psychological value is determined entirely by scarcity. When your responses, your time, and your anger are constantly guaranteed, their market value drops to absolute zero. If people know exactly how you will react to a slight, if they know you will eventually forgive, over-explain, and return to your compliant baseline, they do not have to negotiate with you. They simply manage you. Picture a standard corporate environment. A high-stakes project is running off the rails, and the burden, as always, falls on you. As the reliable employee, you send a long, detailed, visibly frustrated email outlining the systemic failures and how unfair the workload has become. What happens? The manager reads half of it, sighs, and files it away. He knows you will still show up tomorrow. Your frustration is a known, easily manageable quantity. Now look at the quiet, detached colleague in that same boardroom. He doesn't send a manifesto. He doesn't complain about fairness or respect. He simply leans back, stops taking notes, and lets a slight, completely unreadable frown cross his face. The entire room's temperature shifts. The manager pauses the meeting just to ask if there is an issue. The silent employee's slight physical withdrawal commands more structural authority than your 3-page emotional essay. When your presence is guaranteed, your absence holds no threat. This is the catastrophic status cost of absolute predictability. You slowly become part of the furniture. When people can map your psychological borders with perfect accuracy, they stop treating you as an autonomous force. You become a fixed asset to be deployed, a mere utility. You are no longer someone they fear losing. You are just someone they occasionally have to soothe with cheap words before you get back to work. Machiavelli understood the lethal danger of overexposure. He observed that familiarity invariably breeds contempt. When a sovereign, a leader, or even a colleague makes himself too common, too transparent, and too easily understood, he strips himself of the very aura that compels obedience and respect. Humans do not revere what they can easily dissect. By constantly making your inner workings digestible to others, you are actively dismantling your own authority. The strategic correction for this is the baseline reset. You must stop being a seamless, frictionless extension of their expectations. You must artificially induce friction into how easily people can access your thoughts, your time, and your emotional state. If you usually text back in 3 minutes, let it sit. If you usually fill the awkward silence in a negotiation just to make the other person comfortable, let the silence suffocate the room instead. You have to intentionally break the algorithm they have built around your behavior. This isn't about playing petty games, it is about restructuring your social physics. They must expend cognitive energy to read you. And when they are spending energy trying to decode your stance, you're the one holding the leverage. You transition from being a predictable utility to an active, respected threat. But inducing this friction requires you to dismantle a deeply ingrained habit, a habit that you currently, tragically, believe is one of your greatest virtues. Distance is not about being cold. It is a structural necessity. You have been conditioned to view rapid replies, immediate availability, and hyper-responsiveness as measures of your professional and social worth. You feel a physiological spike of anxiety when a message sits unread. You feel an overwhelming compulsion to bridge any conversational gap just to alleviate your own internal tension. Look at your daily interactions. When someone texts you with a minor demand, you halt your workflow to respond within seconds. When a conversation at a boardroom table hits a lull, you rush in with a concession, an observation, or a nervous laugh to keep the energy alive. You believe you are being collaborative. You believe you are being polite. You are actually signaling low status. You are falling victim to the hidden mechanism of asymmetric access. The person who controls the pace of the interaction controls the reality of the interaction. If someone can make you break your concentration, alter your schedule, or rush your words simply by pinging your phone or staring at you in silence, they own your rhythm. And if they own your rhythm, you have absolutely no leverage. You are reacting, not directing. Imagine a high-stakes conversation. It could be a salary negotiation or a difficult discussion with a colleague who is subtly testing your authority. They make an unreasonable demand, cross their arms, and look at you. The average person instantly panics. They immediately start talking. They soften their stance, justify their previous actions, or begin negotiating against themselves simply to fill the suffocating dead air. Now watch the sovereign architect in the exact same room. The demand is made. The architect does not flinch. They simply look back. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. The delay feels entirely unnatural. It is heavy. By refusing to immediately bridge the conversational gap, the architect transfers the entirety of the anxiety directly back onto the person who made the demand. The other party's nervous system begins to crack under the weight of the silence. They start backpedaling and over-explaining before the architect has even spoken a single word.
Machiavelli's The Prince teaches us a brutal truth about perception. The sovereign must remain slightly remote to preserve the aura of command. If the king is always in the village square, arguing with the merchants and responding to every petty grievance, he is no longer the king. He is just another merchant. By rushing to bridge every social gap, you signal that their momentary comfort is more valuable than your baseline composure. You are placing yourself in the village square. Every time you instantly react, you subsidize their power at the cost of your own. Your accessibility becomes a cheap commodity. You train them to believe that their mere presence dictates your actions. The strategic correction is not complicated, but it will feel deeply uncomfortable. It is called the 3-second audit. You must engineer a physical pause before reacting to any external stimulus. When the phone buzzes, you do not look. When the aggressive question is asked, you breathe, hold steady eye contact, and wait 3 full seconds before opening your mouth. This pause is a psychological firewall. It proves, both to them and to your own nervous system, that you are not a stimulus response machine. You operate on your timeline, not theirs. This simple act forces the other person to wait at the gates of your attention, re-establishing you as the prize to be won, rather than the utility to be used. Drop a comment right now and type, "I no longer subsidize disrespect with my attention." But do not be naive. Once you begin to establish this structural distance, the social ecosystem around you will fight back.
The people who used to exploit your immediate availability will feel the immediate shift in leverage. They will try to drag you back down to the baseline. Here is exactly how they will do it. Your face is betraying your strategy. You spend hours crafting the perfect argument. You rehearse exactly what you will say when you are inevitably challenged. You build a fortress of logic. Yet the moment someone cuts you off, dismisses your point, or throws a subtle testing remark your way, all that preparation simply evaporates. Your jaw tightens, your pitch raises, your cadence accelerates. You may think you are holding your ground because the words coming out of your mouth are logically sound, but logic is entirely irrelevant here. You have already lost. You are suffering from the psychological bleed of microtells. In high-stakes interactions, people do not listen to your arguments. They read your nervous system. They track the tension in your neck, the speed of your breathing, and the sudden shift in your posture. When your physical form reacts to their provocation, it sends a subconscious, undeniable signal that your internal fortress has been breached. They suddenly realize they possess the launch codes to your emotional state. You are no longer a mystery. You are a machine they know exactly how to operate. Picture a high-agency woman in a corporate boardroom. She is presenting a strategy she has meticulously built over months. A dismissive superior, perhaps feeling subconsciously threatened by her competence, leans back and drops a patronizing, subtly disrespectful question designed specifically to rattle her. The trap is perfectly set. If she gets defensive, raises her voice, or rushes to aggressively justify her competence, she leaks power. She becomes the emotional one. She loses status. Instead, she applies the doctrine. She stops speaking. She locks eyes with him. Her facial expression drops to absolute, dead-eyed neutrality. No frown, no forced smile, just a cold, unblinking assessment. She lets the silence stretch. By refusing to leak even a single drop of emotional reaction, she turns his test into a mirror. The silence highlights the staggering absurdity of his remark. His attempt to rattle her fails spectacularly. In the sudden vacuum of her non-reaction, he is the one who suddenly looks erratic and unprofessional. This is where Stoic discipline intersects with Machiavellian perception management. Your emotions are internal weather. They are inevitable, but they do not dictate your external maneuvers. The master strategist understands that showing anger, frustration, or eagerness is a voluntary transaction. You only reveal an emotion when it serves a calculated strategic purpose, never simply because you feel it. The cost of ignoring this reality is total subjugation. When they know they can alter your state, you become a toy, a known variable. You are no longer a sovereign individual. You are a reactive mechanism that can be triggered at will. Every time someone makes a passive-aggressive comment and you visibly flush with annoyance, you reward their behavior. You validate their tactic. You prove that their psychological spear penetrated your armor. They will carefully catalog that weakness and use it against you whenever they need to reassert dominance. The correction is a technique called the Obsidian Wall. You must train your physical form to detach completely from your internal emotional spike. When a provocation lands, your heart rate might jump. You might feel the sudden hot adrenaline of anger. Let it burn internally, but instantly lock down the physical exits. Relax your jaw, lower your shoulders, breathe slowly through your nose. Do not narrow your eyes. Do not break eye contact. Become utterly smooth and unreadable. You do not absorb the blow. You let it hit a surface so hard and frictionless that it shatters on impact. Mastering your physical response is the foundation, but even if your face is perfectly still, you can still bleed power through your words. There is one specific verbal behavior that causes more structural damage to your status than anything else. It is a habit born from weakness, dressed up as politeness, and you do it every single day. The moment you start explaining, you have already lost the frame. You have a habit that you mask as politeness. Whenever you set a boundary, decline a request, or make a decision that displeases someone, you feel an overwhelming compulsion to justify it. You offer context. You provide backstory. You detail your schedule, your workload, and your emotional state. You think you are being reasonable. You think you are preserving the relationship by making them understand. You are actually submitting to the subservience of context. In the cold mechanics of power, explaining is never a neutral transfer of information. Explaining assumes they have the jurisdictional right to judge your actions. When you offer a reason for your denial, you are subconsciously acknowledging their authority to evaluate whether your reason is valid. You hand them the gavel and willingly place yourself on the witness stand. The person who demands an explanation occupies the high ground. The person who scrambles to provide it occupies the low ground. You are asking for permission to own your own life. Watch this play out in a daily scenario. You receive a text asking you to take on an extra project or an invitation to a social event you have zero intention of attending. The weak person, terrified of friction, sends a frantic 3-paragraph excuse. They say they are so sorry, they would love to, but they have just been so swamped with work and they are feeling burnt out, so they cannot make it. The recipient reads this and instantly senses the psychological bleed. They now have leverage. Because you gave them variables, they can now negotiate your boundaries. They reply that it will only take an hour or that you need a break anyway. Your excuse becomes a puzzle for them to solve, an obstacle for them to outmaneuver. You gave them the ammunition to dismantle your boundary. Now, look at the sovereign individual in the exact same scenario. The text arrives, the reply is sent. I will not be able to make it. Period. No excuse, no apology, no soft pedaling. They hold a silence. The recipient hits a brick wall. There are no variables to argue with. There is no context to exploit. The boundary stands absolute. Machiavelli understood the peril of over-justification. A ruler who constantly explains his motives to the populace degrades his own authority. He invites debate where there should be compliance. When a decision is absolute, defending it only weakens it. True power does not ask for understanding. It simply establishes reality. The man who explains too much trains others to doubt him. The status cost of over-explaining is devastating. You place yourself on trial, making them the judge. You strip yourself of autonomy. You signal that your internal decision is not valid until it receives their external stamp of approval. Over time, people will learn that your boundaries are merely opening bids in a continuous negotiation. They will push, prod, and debate your decisions because you have trained them that your resolve is hollow. If you must constantly explain why you deserve space, you do not have it. You become an asset they can argue into submission. The strategic correction is a doctrine called the period rule. From this moment forward, sentences regarding your boundaries end in a period, not a comma followed by an excuse. I am not available for this project. I will not be attending. That timeline does not work for me. State the reality, drop the period, and stop typing. Stop talking. If you feel the anxiety rising in your chest, the desperate, conditioned need to add the word because, swallow it. Let them deal with the raw, unpolished reality of your denial. But this immediately creates a volatile situation. What happens when they refuse to accept the boundary? What happens when they stare at you or push back, directly demanding an explanation? When the pressure peaks, you must know how to weaponize the void. Silence is the heaviest element in the psychological universe. When you implement the period rule, when you state a boundary, deliver a hard denial, and offer absolutely zero justification, you create a sudden, terrifying gap in the conversation. Look closely at your own physical reaction in that exact moment. You will feel an unbearable, agonizing pressure building in your chest. Your mind will race, screaming at you to say something, anything to break the tension. You will feel an overwhelming urge to rescue the other person from the awkwardness, to soften the blow, to laugh nervously, or to backtrack. If you open your mouth, you destroy everything.
You are falling prey to the vacuum effect. Human nature absolutely abhors a social vacuum. We are biologically wired to seek continuous feedback, validation, and rhythmic exchange in our communications. When you cut off that supply, the human brain panics. In any interaction, the weaker party will always rush to fill the dead air. And when they rush to fill it, they almost always do so by negotiating against themselves, revealing their insecurities or yielding their position. Picture a high-stakes scenario. A professional states his terms for a contract, or a man clearly states what he will and will not tolerate in a dynamic. He delivers his terms cleanly, drops the period, and then shuts his mouth completely. The other party stares back, fully expecting the usual barrage of nervous justifications. But the justification never comes. The silence stretches. 1 second, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. The vacuum becomes physically oppressive. The other party's nervous system simply cannot handle the unresolved tension. Panicked by the complete lack of feedback, they crack. They begin offering spontaneous concessions, backtracking on their own demands, and filling the air with their own nervous chatter. They mumble that maybe they could adjust the timeline, or that they understand where you are coming from. The silent individual did not have to argue a single point. He simply built a void, and the other person threw their own leverage into it just to escape the discomfort. Sun Tzu taught that warfare requires letting the enemy reveal their form while remaining formless yourself. Machiavelli echoed this deeply in his understanding of court politics. The one who speaks freely reveals his hand. When you talk, you provide data. You provide variables. You provide a target. Silence provides absolutely nothing. It is a cold mirror that forces the other person to face their own reflection. The status cost of breaking this silence is absolute. When you rush to fill the dead air, you are paying a massive subsidy to the other person's comfort, and you are using your own power as the currency. You signal that you cannot tolerate friction. You broadcast that you need the interaction to be smooth far more than you need your boundaries to be respected. The moment you start nervously babbling to kill the awkwardness, you transition from a sovereign figure into a subservient one. Your strategic correction is the precise combination of sustained eye contact and total silence. When you deliver your boundary, you must physically brace yourself for the vacuum. Relax your facial muscles. Do not fidget. Do not look down. Lock eyes with the person across from you and simply exist in the space. Let the awkwardness build. Let it become entirely suffocating. Do not try to rescue them from the tension they are feeling. Silence is a structure, not a void. Let them drown in it. When you master this, you realize that silence is not merely a defensive shield, it is a highly offensive weapon. You can deploy it to extract truth, to force concessions, and to establish absolute authority without ever raising your voice. Drop a comment and type, "My silence is a structure, not a void." You now have the mechanics. You know how to stop the emotional leakage, how to cut off the context, and how to weaponize the pause. But mechanics in isolation are easily broken under pressure. It is time to assemble these individual tactics into a permanent, unbreakable architecture. You do not need a new personality. You need a new operating system. You understand the mechanics now. You see the leaks, but a quiet, paralyzing fear is holding you back. You are terrified that if you actually deploy these tactics, if you stop over-explaining, if you stop rushing to fill the dead air, if you become deliberately unreadable, you will lose the people around you. You worry they will call you arrogant. You worry they will label you as cold, distant, or completely changed. You are terrified of the social friction that comes with claiming your own space. This fear is a lie engineered by your old conditioning. You are misunderstanding the hidden mechanism at play, the filter of friction. You currently believe that maintaining constant peace by being overly accessible
is proof of strong relationships. It is not. It is proof of your utility. When you implement structural distance, you do not repel high-value people. You repel parasites. The individuals who become the most enraged by your new boundaries are the exact people who are quietly benefiting from your lack of them. High-status people respect distance. Only those who rely on your subjugation will demand your continuous emotional leakage. Picture the inevitable transition phase. It happens the moment you finally take your life back. You stop replying to the subtle jabs in the group chat, letting their attempts at provocation echo into the void. You deploy the 3-second audit when a colleague tries to frantically dump their workload onto your desk, staring at them until they retreat. You decline an invitation and use the period rule, offering absolutely zero explanation for your absence. Suddenly, the pushback begins. A friend or colleague snaps. They send a passive-aggressive message, claiming you are suddenly too important for them now. They throw a subtle, manipulative tantrum. They attempt to weaponize guilt to shame you back into your old, compliant box. They desperately want the predictable, easily managed version of you back online. Machiavelli understood this violent resistance perfectly. When discussing the establishment of a new principality, he noted that there is nothing more perilous to conduct than the introduction of a new order of things. The reformer makes enemies of all who profited from the old order. When you change the rules of access to your time and your psychology, the old regime of your social circle will revolt. The friction is not a sign that you are making a mistake. It is the mathematical proof that you are shifting the balance of power. The status cost of yielding to this friction is absolute. If you cave the moment someone accuses you of being different, you signal that your sovereignty is entirely conditional. You prove that they can still access your nervous system simply by feigning disappointment or withdrawing their cheap validation. Refusing to upgrade your architecture means you volunteer to remain the designated dumping ground for their emotional needs. You will spend the rest of your life subsidizing their comfort with your own exhaustion, forever trapped in a cycle of endless justification. Your strategic correction is unapologetic integration. You must not only expect the pushback, you must welcome it. Anticipate the anger, the passive aggression, and the accusations. When the tantrums occur, do not apologize. Do not break the Obsidian Wall. Do not fall back into the trap of over-explaining why you are acting differently. You must categorize their reaction as raw intelligence data. If someone walks away from you because they can no longer treat you as a predictable utility, let them walk. You are not losing allies. You are shedding dead weight. Structural distance does not repel value. It repels parasites. The architecture is now complete. The mechanisms are securely in your hands. Now, we arrive at the final command. You used to fear being misunderstood. You spent your entire life desperately trying to translate your intentions, justify your boundaries, and repeatedly prove your value so that the world would finally treat you right. You thought that if you were just transparent enough, if you just explained yourself clearly enough, the subtle disrespect would eventually stop. Now you realize the cold, mechanical truth. Being fully understood is a vulnerability. Total transparency is the absolute death of leverage. We have finally resolved the central equation. You do not defeat the predictability tax by fighting back. You do not win by out-arguing your detractors, or by raising your voice to passionately demand the respect you feel you are owed. You win by simply removing their access to your nervous system. You win by systematically dismantling their algorithms and becoming a permanent, unreadable variable in their daily calculations. You are no longer an open book. Open books are cheap commodities. They are picked up, quickly skimmed, fully digested, and carelessly left on the table for anyone to flip through. From this moment forward, you are a sovereign architect. You operate exclusively from a fortified position. Your words are scarce. Your emotional reactions are incredibly expensive. Your silence is heavy, calculated, and fully weaponized.
Machiavelli did not write his doctrines for the masses who sit around complaining about the inherent unfairness of the game. He wrote them for the rare few who are willing to do the deeply uncomfortable work of building the fortress. He understood that true power is not merely about ruling over others. It is about establishing absolute, undeniable sovereignty over your own psychological perimeter. This is your final strategic command. Guard your access with ruthless precision. Enforce the period rule without a single moment of hesitation. Weaponize your pause. Stop explaining your existence to people who are entirely committed to misunderstanding you. Never again subsidize their comfort with your own emotional transparency. When they test you, give them nothing but the cold, reflective mirror of your absolute silence. Let them squirm. Let them drown in the friction of trying to decode your stance. If they want access to your mind, make them earn it. If they want your reaction, let them starve. If this doctrine speaks to your exact reality, do not just consume it and move on. Claim the identity upgrade. Subscribe to Leverage Doctrine. We do not do motivation here. We do not do feel-good affirmations or emotional venting. We build architecture. Not for comfort, for command. Let them guess. While they are busy reading your silence, you are busy building your empire.